From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Olumide Macaulay.
Hello and welcome tonight. Efforts to address concerns in Nigeria's political landscape continues as Nigeria's former education minister, Obieze Okeisili, and other prominent Nigerians team up to launch Fix Politics Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari and other prominent Nigerians extol the virtues of Second Republic politician and first civilian governor of Kaduna State, Balarabe Musa, who died today at the age of 84. President Buhari approves reinstatement of Professor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe as the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos. And U.S. state of Georgia announced a full recount of votes in the U.S. presidential election after a close finish between President Trump and Democratic candidate Joe Biden. Plus business, sports, and later, international news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, federal government ratifies Nigeria's membership with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement ahead of December 5 deadline.
On sports news tonight, it's a full house as all invited players arrive at the Super Eagles camp in Benin City, the Edo State capital.
A new effort to fix some of the challenges in the Nigerian political landscape has come on board. The initiative Fix Nigeria Politics, a brainchild of Nigeria's former education minister and former vice president of the World Bank, Dr. Obieze Okeisili, and some other prominent Nigerians, was launched today virtually. Dr. Obieze Okeisili believes there exists a nexus between politics and economic performance, hence to fix the cracks in the political system for better performance. Our correspondent, Gimba Umar, reports.
The roll call is a pointer to what to expect from this gathering, which is holding virtually in the spirit of the times.
It is about our politics.
The convener, Obieze Okeisili, Nigeria's former education minister and former vice president of the World Bank, has brought together a wide range of personalities, from politics to business and the academia, as well as the youth. Their mission to provide solutions to some of the nation's political problems.
My study established that the quality of the electorate is a problem. The electorate in Nigeria is without influence to determine good political outcomes in the political process.
More questions were to come in the 4-hour meeting. The keynote address given by the former Mexican president, Felipe Calderon, clarified that the electorate is hugely responsible for bad political outcomes. The way out, however, is irrefutable.
Part of the problem could be solved through the massively break into public life by citizens. That flesh and blood citizens come to be the new politicians of a new era. So this gap that separates citizens from politicians and politics has to be closed, and it has to be closed from both sides of the equation. It is a bridge.
Misconception on what politics truly means stares away from the frightening to encouragement and ethical sense, as well as moral duty.
In that regard,
the issues were many and had to be broken into segments, one of which had the prominent pastor Tunde Bakare as the speaker. He bears his mind on whether there is a consensus on how to achieve the desired change.
We need to create a platform of intelligent, hardworking, conscientious people who are not only promoting their own interests, will bring all this into a melting pot and be able to forge what will fix our politics, because if we don't fix politics, politics will fix us.
There were more speakers on the segment cutting across generations. For the young ones, however, fixing politics in Nigeria can only start from the education sector.
How do we strike that balance in a place where education and enlightenment is only a privilege that a majority has been in deprivation of?
The key to productive politics in terms of how
It's what I call a conscious, ethical, organized, and vigilant citizenry. That this key component of the citizen themselves is actually what decides what kind of politics you are going to get and so.
I don't think we should assume too much that the elite understand and we know. So therefore, we should quickly just be focusing on those at the lower end of the socioeconomic strata because of the numbers.
So it does appear that the conversation continues on how to address some of the lapses in the polity. One thing is, however, clear. Commitment on the part of all and sundry is required for meaningful change. Gimba Umar, Channels Television News.
Also on nation building, taking positive advantage of opportunities for contributing to development is one way young people can show their readiness for leadership, even as government needs to provide the enabling environment. These are some of the suggestions shared during the 4th Edo Youth Summit 2020, part of programs lined up for the 4th Alaodaro Summit and inauguration of Governor Godwin Obaseki for a second term. The event, which held in Benin City, the Edo State capital, also featured presentation of awards to individuals who had supported youth development programs in the state, as well as the launch of a book on job creation in Edo State.
Our elected representatives.
For the 4th consecutive year, the Edo State government has brought youth in the state together to share ideas for development. This edition of the Youth Summit, holding in the new festival hall of the Government House in Benin City, the state capital, is focused on getting young people to contribute to the Make Edo Great Again agenda. There's a discourse on how the youth can transform passion to political power.
That every business that you go into should have an element of social enterprise in it. You know, it's not just CSR, corporate social responsibility, but you're saying that I'm doing this business and I'm looking at the SDGs. And I want to give that to the young people who are here today to say, don't go into business for profit. Go into business with purpose. Go into business with a very defined set of values that are giving back to your community. And you're not just saying, give me a handout. I want a hand up as well.
The Deputy Governor of the state reminds the young people of the benefits in taking advantage of available opportunities.
What do you hope to do? What is that God's deposited talent in you? When you discover it, you don't need government. Government is just an enabler. Government is just a supervisor. Government is just to create an environment for your potentials to be driven by you. But can you drive that potential when you don't even know it?
In another session, the Edo State Governor has a conversation with some of the young entrepreneurs present.
Our emphasis in the next 4 years, if we have to make Edo great again, is you, the young people of Edo State. And we are not going to do it by giving you handouts. We are not going to do it by expanding government and letting everybody to become an SA or an SSA in government. It's the wrong way to do it. We're going to do it by making sure that government is efficient and accountable to you. That the taxes we raise from you is judiciously spent to provide the environment you need to do the things you need to do.
The 4th stream of the Edo Jobs Internship and Apprenticeship Scheme with GIZ Germany and Edo Jobs Leatherworks Program for returnees and youth living with disabilities are also launched at the event.
In the aftermath of the EndSARS protests, a chief magistrate in the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Musa, has granted bail to 6 EndSARS protesters in the sum of 50,000 naira each, with one surety each in like sum. The 6 protesters who were arrested while wearing Revolution Now T-shirts during a protest at the front of the National Assembly are Olutosin Adeniji, Rasidu Bashiru, Abdulsalam Zubeiru, Kabiru Ghazali, Paul Akiwumi, and Devar Chomo. The protesters who pleaded not guilty to the charges were arraigned on Friday, November the 6th by the FCT Commissioner of Police on charges of criminal conspiracy, unlawful assembly and inciting public disturbances contrary to Section 97 of the Penal Code. Although the bail applications with the affidavit evidence were said to have been served on the legal department of the FCT Police Command, no legal representation was made or reasons adduced for their absence. The magistrate has adjourned hearing in the matter till January 25th, 2021. A group of professionals under the aegis of Concerned Professionals has described the arrest and closing of accounts of some of the EndSARS protesters as a wrong approach by the federal government. In a statement jointly signed on behalf of the group by former legal advisor to the APC, Muiz Banire, human rights lawyer Femi Falana, and Professor Patu Tomi, amongst others, the group notes that contrary to expectations that the aftermath of the protest will make the government adopt more pragmatic means in addressing the issues raised, the government has resorted to witch hunting. According to the group, there is clearly a betrayal of trust and breach of good faith in the negotiation with the EndSARS youth. It is the promise to look into the complaints of the youth that made many people counsel an end to the protests. The recent approach of the government is a reinforcement of the lack of trust the youth have about the government from the onset. The group condemned what it described as the victimization being visited on the EndSARS protesters in totality, while urging the government to stop the adoption of undemocratic and inhumane methods to dealing with the aftermath of the EndSARS protests, as protest is a constitutional and democratic right of citizens. Lagos State Governor, meanwhile, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has continued to receive solidarity visits over the devastation that trailed the hijack of the EndSARS protests in the state. His latest guest is the Abia State Governor, Okezie Ikpeazu, who is asking the youth to always toe the path of dialogue in addressing issues they feel strongly about. For Governor Sanwo-Olu, it's a time for leaders to act fast, think of how to engage the youth positively, and ensure that something good comes out of the EndSARS protest.
I bring you warm greetings from Abia State and also say that working with him and other leaders in our country, we will think deeply and come out with projects and programs that will include the youth population of our country and respective states. We will also mainstream the entire strata of our society, women, young people, and even the elderly in our projects to make sure that everybody feels the impact of government. We want to urge our youths to exercise restraint and a little patience and to find a way to develop faith in governance and government.
It's such a time where all of us needs to bring up our A team, and be rest assured that we can indeed push the level of governance to a higher level. What we've seen, or what we saw in the past couple of weeks in Lagos and some other parts of the country, are a clarion call and a reflection of some of the gaps that are in our system. And you and I have discussed even before coming out here, and we've shared experiences, on what are the things that we can, take away, concrete takeaway from the disturbance, the protest that we've seen. And as leaders, we should not gloss over these things. We should not just carpet them. We should indeed face them frontally and be able to deal with them.
And to law enforcement and security, the Lagos State Police Command has dismissed 10 of its officers for various offences, ranging from murder to discreditable conduct, excessive use of power, corruption, amongst others. The State Police Command says the action is part of efforts to promote discipline and core values of policing in Lagos State. It adds that 81 personnel were tried for various criminal and disciplinary offences committed between October 2019 and October 20. 10 of them were dismissed, 18 demoted, 29 were given warning letters, while 16 of the men were discharged and acquitted for want of evidence. In part 2, after the break, Nigerian Army releases the names of additional 86 members of Boko Haram on its wanted list. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television, Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Efforts to address concerns in Nigeria's political landscape continues as Nigeria's former education minister, Obieze Kesili, and other prominent Nigerians team up to launch Fix Politics Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari and other prominent Nigerians extol the virtues of Second Republic politician and first civilian governor of Kaduna State, Balarabe Musa, who died today at the age of 84. And the U.S. state of Georgia announces a full recount of its votes in the U.S. presidential election after a close finish between President Trump and Democratic candidate Joe Biden. The Senate Committee on the Army is reiterating its position against the de-radicalization and rehabilitation of repentant Boko Haram members. The committee chairman, Senator Aliyu Ndume, mentioned this during a briefing with journalists after a closed-door budget defense session with the Army. Senator Ndume gave reasons for this position and also laments what he describes as grossly inadequate funding for the Army.
I'm in disagreement with the government on the issue of de-radicalizing and reintegrating. My position is still the same. The executive's position is different, but I still maintain that position. You can't be resettling people, pampering them while the war is not over. The committee is on the same page, and I believe many Nigerians are on the same page with us. I, in my own village, Malams that are Muslims, not ordinary Muslims, but Malams, elders above 60, quote me, 75 of them, distinguished colleagues, were taken to an abattoir and slaughtered by Boko Haram. And can you imagine that the Nigerian army or the Nigerian government is saying that because these people have gone to repent, or they say they hand themselves off, you bring them back and you pamper them. If you give an IDP here 150,000 as pack as they give them, I have over 10,000 of them here. If you give one of them 50,000, tomorrow he will be back home. He is displaced, he's suffering, he knows these people that killed their parents. That is wrong. And then, sorry sir, I'm getting emotional. But in addition to that, the recent attack in Damboa was carried out by a repentant, giving information as to the movement of the army.
The body of former governor of the former first civilian governor of Kaduna State, Alhaji Balarabe Musa, has been laid to rest at the Sultan Bello Mosque in Kaduna. Alhaji Balarabe Musa, who has been described as one of the models of democracy in the country, died this morning at the age of 84 after suffering from a protracted illness. The funeral was attended by hundreds of sympathizers and political associates.
It's a solemn day in Kaduna. The state is in mourning after news broke of the death of its former governor and elder statesman, Balarabe Musa. Sympathizers are the residents to pay their respects. The body is thereafter transported to the Sultan Bello Mosque for the funeral service. The congregation, comprising of family members, former governors, political and business associates, government officials, and residents, performed the prayer rites for the repose of the soul. Accolades are not in short supply for a man who is said to have shaped the path of what Kaduna State is today.
He was very fair and transparent and honest, and he has served his people right in the right direction and also shaped the entire Kaduna State when it was Kaduna and Kazina. And we are going to seriously miss him.
He was a determined person, very dogged. Whatever he set up his mind, he tried to see it through. Balarabe Musa has achieved quite a lot, and I think his removal was basically based on the fact that he was living ahead of his time.
The People's Redemption Party, PRP, is the political platform the former governor stayed true to till death. And its national chairman says this is an example to follow.
It's somebody you can hold high anytime and be proud of. He's somebody you cannot associate with corruption. He's somebody you cannot associate with selfishness, with tribalism, or with some kind of chauvinism, with religious bigotry, with lack of patriotism. No, he's above all those. And it is his example that we hope the youth of this country in particular will follow.
As the body is laid to rest, the memory of Balarabe Musa, especially his teachings on peace and unity, will hopefully be passed down for generations to come to imbibe.
Meanwhile, the president has commiserated with the people and government of Kaduna State on the death of the renowned politician. In a statement, media aide to the president, Mr. Balarabe Musa, says that President Muhammadu Buhari joins the people and government of Kaduna in mourning the former governor of the state, whose passing will be sorely missed by all Nigerians who've diligently followed his antecedents as a voice for the voiceless. The president says Balarabe Musa reflected the passion that heralded the nation's independence, which continued in the quest for a return to civilian government after years of military rule and pursuit of good and inclusive government up until his death. Staying with his passing, Alhaji Balarabe Musa was a left-wing politician and was elected governor of Kaduna State in 1979 on the platform of the People's Redemption Party during the Second Republic. He held this office until he was impeached on June the 23rd, 1981, and since then, he's been a vocal voice for the demand of good governance. Our correspondent, Sheon Kimbaloye, looks at the life and times of this northern political figure who insisted on holding the ruling class accountable.
Abdul Qadri Balarabe Musa, born on the 21st of August 1936, notable as the first elected governor of Kaduna State. He assumed office in October of 1979 and in his early 40s. And about 3 years later, he was impeached and removed from office. The politics of the State Assembly frustrated his efforts at forming a cabinet and the opposition, which led to his impeachment. Mr. Musa started out his education at Azaria Middle School before he went on to the Institute of Administration in Zaria. He worked as an accounts clerk, a school teacher, and held various managerial positions related to accountancy while studying at different colleges in London to gain additional qualifications. The Kaya-born politician is a man of many parts: a father, a teacher, an administrator, a governor, politician, a presidential candidate, and a leader.
And he was proud of his dignity.
In 2003, Balarabe Musa was the People's Redemption Party flag bearer at the presidential election. The vocal Musa led the Conference of Nigerian Political Parties, CNPP, and will bear his mind on major national issues, most times pointing out the faults of the government of the day.
And this system has produced a particular leadership appropriate to it, a thieving leadership. And that's why we have this disabling level of corruption, stealing, and criminal waste of resources, which everybody sees everywhere in this country.
Balarabe Musa proposed an alliance of opposition political parties in Nigeria, an intervention which gave birth to the mega party movement that was designed to fight a one-party rule in the country before the 2007 general elections. In 2018, Balarabe Musa exited active politics in Nigeria, and on November 11, 2020, he breathed his last.
When the News at 10 returns, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, cuts the 2020 oil demand outlook again on rising COVID-19 cases. That's on Business News. Do join us again. Welcome back to the northeastern region of the country, where the Nigerian Army has officially infused the Civilian Joint Task Force into its operations. And this is coming at a time the military authorities unveiled the fourth list of the most wanted Boko Haram members. The Army says it needs help from the Civilian Joint Task Force and local hunters to trace the criminals. 86 persons appeared in this latest list of most wanted Boko Haram members, bringing the total number of those on the wanted list to 399.
It's been more than a decade of insurgency and counterinsurgency operations in the northeastern part of Nigeria. In the region, Nigeria's military has embarked on several operations starting from Zaman Lafia to the most recent Operation Fireball. Yet the war continues, with attendant loss of lives and property. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, said it's time to re-strategize by bringing on board members of the Civilian Joint Task Force, local hunters, and their affiliates into the operations.
They must be fished out. And those in the forest, if you encounter them, make sure you deal with them decisively. If they cannot be arrested or cannot be captured, we have gotten the right solution to ending this menace of the Boko Haram terrorists in our state, in our country, as well as for humanity.
Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum is supportive of the collaboration, as he says anything that will fast-track the end of the war and resettlement of civilians is a welcome development.
Security is very important. We have to understand the nexus between peace, security, and development. We want to reconstruct many villages. We have the intention of rehabilitating many infrastructures and resettling many communities. This could never happen without security.
The Lafia Dole Theatre Commander, Major General Farouk Yahya, explains the advantage of having the local volunteers on board.
I believe they will even become handy in identification of some of these Boko Haram terrorists who are going to launch today, and many others also that are not even captured there. Their skill and competence will become handy.
Names of additional 86 wanted Boko Haram members appear in this latest release, bringing the total number of wanted persons to 399. The Army did not, however, specify how many arrests have so far been made since its first list was published back in 2016.
To the education sector, the President has approved the reinstatement of Professor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe as the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Lagos. President Muhammadu Buhari's decision is contained in a statement following his approval of the report of the Special Visitation Panel set up to investigate allegations of misconduct against Professor Ogundipe by the Chairman of the University Governing Council, Dr. Wali Babalaki. One of the findings and recommendations of that panel is that of the removal of Professor Ogundipe, that it did not follow due process, as the Vice-Chancellor did not have an opportunity to defend himself. The panel also faulted the process adopted by the Governing Council in the appointment of Professor Amadolu Shoyombo as acting Vice-Chancellor, saying it was inconsistent with the law. It therefore recommended that the Governing Council, chaired by Dr. Babalaki, be dissolved, and the allegations made against the Vice-Chancellor before and after the panel was constituted be investigated by a regular visitation panel. The Federal Executive Council has approved the ratification of Nigeria's membership of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area from the Ministry of Industry and Trade and Investment, and the purchase of a 3D aerodrome and approach simulator for the Lagos Airport for 470.3 million naira. This formed part of the decisions reached at the 23rd Virtual Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by the President today. At the end of that meeting, the Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, told State House correspondents that he would not answer questions on the EndSARS process since the panel of inquiry investigating the matter have begun their work. The Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company has commenced the mass distribution and installment of 1 million smart prepaid meters to its customers for effective and qualitative power service delivery in its first franchise areas. The chairman of the board of directors of the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company, Mr. Yusuf Abubakar, says the arrangement was agreed and adopted by all the stakeholders in the power sector as part of measures to put an end to estimated billing, which according to him has always pitched electricity consumers against distribution companies.
The move to ensure mass metering of every household and businesses in the country continues, with the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company acting swiftly to the demands of its teeming customers to end the menace of estimated billings in the electricity sector.
Of all Nigerians, that's all do.
1 million prepaid meters is being distributed in 4 franchise states of Kaduna, Kebbi, Zamfara and Sokoto. A project which the management of the Kaduna Electricity Distribution believes will not only enhance transparency and service, but will also create thousands of jobs.
But what we are trying to do with these initiatives that are being promoted by all the stakeholders is to see how we will resolve and crack the intractable problem of electricity in our country.
Key stakeholders who gather for the launch of the distribution, including the chairman of Senate Committee on Power and traditional leaders, applaud the initiative, which they describe as a new era in the electricity sector.
Once this mass metering is completed, and once at least you have 80% of customers metered, the issue of collection would have been reduced, electricity theft would have also been reduced.
The managing director of Kaduna Electric, Engineer Garba Haruna, says the distribution exercise will be carried out in phases, starting with about 86,000 prepaid meters between the end of this year and January 2021, to ensure that all customers are metered and get right amount of electricity they pay for.
We wish that our customers will give us the necessary access to ensure that we install these meters, and then they will be happy to be vended. All the time. If you don't need electricity, you have to manage your energy.
With the commencement of distribution of free prepaid meters to consumers, the management of Kaduna Electric expects that going forward, there will be more transparency in the collection of electricity revenues, since it is now easier for consumers to vend the number of electricity tariff they can afford without bypassing.
Now let's turn our attention to business news. Here's Anne Owanwodo.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Olumide. Let's begin tonight with the oil output. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries has again cut its global oil demand forecast for the remaining days of this year and next year, citing a surge in coronavirus cases as well as weaker than expected economic outlook. In its latest report released today, the oil producer group says that it now expects world oil demand to contract by about 9.8 million barrels per day this year, which is a 0.3 million barrels downward revision from last month's projection. At the same time, OPEC expects oil demand growth for the year 2021 to rise by 6.2 million barrels per day, which is also a 0.3 million barrels downward revision from last month's forecast. That report is coming ahead of the group's meeting with its allies set for November the 30th and December the 1st, which plans to discuss the next phase of oil production policy. Some artisans and transport operators in Federal Capital Territory Abuja have started benefiting from the federal government's survival fund. The one-off grant of 30,000 naira is to cushion the effect of the coronavirus pandemic on their businesses. At a disbursement ceremony in the nation's capital, the Director General of the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Diko Rada, explains that the target is to support 333,000 of them and transport operators across the country.
Artisans and transport operators from different parts of the Federal Capital Territory are here for the 30,000 naira grant promised by the federal government as plans to cushion the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The recipients applaud the government for the scheme, but like Oliver Twist, they are asking for more.
They were capturing people even under the sun, even when it was raining. These men and women were doing their work. Shortly after that, we started hearing our people coming to tell us that they were receiving alerts. Many people in my own group and the people that did not participate, that are not under my own association, they received alerts.
We are in the association registered with 200 names. About 190 names were enumerated. The data were taken. And about less than 25 of us anyway, I am included, who have this money. We receive a lot from this money. So what we are actually telling the government is we appreciate government for this kind gesture to us, and we want to ask them that they should do more so that many others will get this money.
The committee assures that the grant, which is distributed in batches, would go round.
And what we are coming here to do today is to know exactly whether the first batch of this segment is being paid or not, whether they have received their money or they have not received their money, and then we'll be able to know where we stop, how are we going to take it up, how are we going to pay the remaining people who have been captured? Because as far as we are concerned, each state was giving a number, Abuja was giving a number, and we will make sure that the numbers given to Abuja will be met.
For those of them that have registered and have been verified, we can tell you that they will collect their money. Some of them are lucky to have collected their money already. So, and I also let them know that the numbers that we have, basically, you have a sense where in some clusters, some people will collect, in some clusters, some people will not collect. And so that's why we're urging people that the earlier you go and apply for this thing, the earlier you get them to enumerate you, the better.
The Artisan Support Scheme, which is a one-off grant, is just a part of the Micro, Small and Medium Scale Enterprises Survival Fund Program.
The local stock market has hit a two-year high today after the benchmark index climbed higher by nearly 2% amid extended bargain hunting by investors. But let's hear more from BC Adebayo.
Thank you for joining us on the Stock Market Reports. The bull is still galloping into the positive territory at the domestic stock markets as investors extend their bargain hunting for some key value stock with strong fundamentals. A day after crossing the 17 trillion naira level, the total value of listed equities jumped higher by 324 billion naira, while the NSE's main index climbed higher by 1.9% to hit the 33,000 level at the close of midweek trading session. Market breadth ended the day with a widely positive margin of 51 gainers against 7 losers, but the major drivers of the impressive performance were the shares of MTN Nigeria, which of course continues to attract investors' attention for a third consecutive day this week, while key components from the 5 key sectors of the equities markets contributed to the extended rally. No doubt, with the current pace of bull run, Nigeria's stock market is once again on its way to reclaim its status as the world's best performing stock market. And that's it on the Stock Market Reports. I am BC Adebayo.
And that ends the midweek edition of Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Lumide.
Thank you, Anne. In the United States, Georgia's Secretary of State has announced a full recount of the vote by hand. The top election official says President-elect Joe Biden leads in the state by around 14,000 votes. The recount comes amidst President Donald Trump's refusal to concede, making claims of fraud in the election process. Here's more on this and other international news on Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. All of Hong Kong's pro-democracy lawmakers have resigned after 4 of their colleagues were disqualified from the local legislature. It comes after Beijing passed a resolution allowing the city's government to disqualify politicians deemed a threat to national security. Shortly afterwards, the opposition lawmakers said they would leave the city legislature in solidarity. For the first time since Hong Kong was handed back to China in 1997, the body has almost no dissenting voices.
For democracy, freedom.
The dismissal of the 4 legislatures is being seen as the latest attempt by China to restrict Hong Kong's freedoms, something Beijing denies. China introduced a controversial and far-reaching national security law in Hong Kong in late June, which criminalized secession, subversion and collusion with foreign forces. US President-elect Joe Biden has said Donald Trump's refusal to concede victory in last week's White House election is an embarrassment.
Well, I just think it's an embarrassment, quite frankly. The only thing that, how can I say this tactfully? I think it will not help the president's legacy, and nothing's going to stop that. And so I'm confident that the fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
However, Mr. Biden, who has already been making contact with foreign leaders, has insisted nothing would stop the transfer of power, announcing the teams he will use to ensure a smooth transition in January. Mr. Trump, meanwhile, tweeted he would ultimately win the race, despite all major TV networks having forecast he lost. The Ethiopian Prime Minister, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019, has rejected a request for peace talks as the conflict in Tigray deepens. Tigray's leader, Debretsion Gebremichael, wrote to the African Union last week to request talks, but Abiy Ahmed said in a tweet that there would be no dialogue until our efforts to ascertain the rule of law are achieved. Hundreds have died since the conflict in Ethiopia's northern region erupted. There's outrage in Mexico at the moment after police fired shots on the beach resort of Cancun during a protest against the killing of women. 2 people were injured by bullets and 2 more protesters were also hurt in the chaos which ensued. The demonstrators were protesting following the murders of 2 women in Cancun over the weekend. Local Governor Carlos Gonzalez condemned what he called violent acts by the police and the intimidation and repression the protests suffered, adding the police chief who gave the order to shoot should be suspended. Clashes have broken out again in the Peruvian capital Lima between security forces and protesters angry at the impeachment of President Martin Vizcarra. Riot police kept the demonstrators away from the Congress building using tear gas and jets of water. On Monday, Congress voted to impeach Mr. Vizcarra over allegations he handed out government contracts in return for bribes. The unrest occurred as the Speaker of Congress, Manuel Merino, was being sworn in as the country's interim president. There are concerns of a growing political crisis as Peru faces a severe economic downturn brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. And finally, some Japanese towns have deployed a robot wolf with flashing lights to scare away bears that have recently become a problem in the countryside. Dubbed Monster Wolf, the red-eyed machine has an infrared sensor that can detect bears or other moving animals. The robot, which is programmed with more than 60 different types of sound, will move its head, make noise, and beam flashing lights when it detects animals nearby. And it seems to be quite successful, as local officials in the city of Takekawa said they have not recorded any bear sightings since installing the Monster Wolf. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
And the main news again. Efforts to address concerns in Nigeria's political landscape continue today as Nigeria's former Education Minister Obi Ezekwesili and other prominent Nigerians teamed up to launch Fix Politics Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari and other prominent Nigerians have been extolling the virtues of Second Republic politician and first civilian governor of Kaduna State, Balarabe Musa, who died today at the age of 84. And U.S. state of Georgia has announced a full recount of its votes in the U.S. presidential election after a close finish between President Trump and President-elect Joe Biden. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Olumide McCall.